Get to that right now? Okay, if you are trying to get there, you can go to the Parks and Rec homepage, and there's a link right there. We will fix the whatdoyouthinkmac.org because we plan on using that as our main form of communication for all of the activities for tonight and for the committee. So before we hand it over to the co-chairs of the committee, it's a little unusual for a committee to be set up and already have the co-chairs going. We did that for a few reasons. As we were selecting committee members, it was clear that this is a big committee. And if we needed to spend a night selecting chairs and co-chairs, that would have taken up quite a bit of time. And as we were interviewing, we noticed there were a couple people that stood out through the interview process, and we reached out to a few of you, and thankfully Ken and Meredith accepted the challenge to be co-chairs for this committee tonight. They've already put time into this, and we appreciate that. They've organized the agenda and are here to help run it. So your staff now will hand it over to your co-chairs to run the meeting. So thank you, Ken and Meredith.
We'll take a couple minutes to just introduce ourselves.
Sure. I am Meredith Maxfield. We moved to McMinnville 2.5 years ago. I stay home currently with my 4 children. I have a 8-year-old son, twin 5-year-olds, and both boys, and then a 3-year-old daughter. We have lived all over the country. My husband's graduate school and then his job training took us all over. So I've experienced community centers and swimming pools all over, and we've lived in Minnesota, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Utah, and now here. I grew up in Boston, though. I am really excited to get to weigh in on kind of the future of what's going on in McMinnville. We have loved it here so far. My sons are all in the dual language program at Columbus, and we actually looked for houses in Columbus or Newby because we wanted the dual language, because we wanted kind of that diversity of culture and the opportunity to learn a language. And so I hope that kind of my friends that we've made through that, I'll be able to represent their interests too. I'm also really interested in going back to graduate school when my daughter's in school full time, and so I've looked into kind of public policy and public administration, and hopefully this will get my feet wet and help me decide if that's what I want to do in the future.
Okay. Well, Ken Rolfe. So my wife and I met in 1998, and we got married in 99. And she was in Beaverton, and I was in Corvallis at the time. We literally looked at the map. We saw McMinnville was kind of in the middle. So we decided, let's go look at McMinnville, and that's how we ended up here. So we don't have any other family. So we've been here since 99. We've raised a couple boys here. I've just echo what Meredith said. We've been through Tiny Tots in the library and the swimming pool and all these wonderful resources that the community offers. And when they asked, if I'd be interested in being on the committee, I was, honored, and I thought it's a great way to kind of give back to the community. It's been such a great, it's been a real blessing for our family to be here. And so we're just really happy to do that. I work up in Washington County, so I commute to Hillsborough. I've been doing that for 20 years now. I work as a parole and probation officer, but my primary job right now is I'm also a licensed professional counselor, and I manage our counseling and victim services program. So that's kind of my area. And kind of going forward, we'll kind of, as Susan mentioned, we'll kind of keep track with the agenda. We'll try to keep us on task time-wise, and really what they did a really nice job. As you kind of look around the room here, we have a really great cross-section. You'll hear more in the intros, but we've read the application. We kind of have the backstory there, but we have a really nice cross-section of the community here. And then now in this room, we basically will be able to kind of move that forward. So we're all kind of representing our family, our friends, our neighbors, and we just want to encourage everyone to just relax, enjoy this. We have an 18-month project here in front of us, so this is like the marathon. It's not the sprint. We just want to relax, get to know each other, and enjoy the ride. And 18 months from now, I think it was Susan, someone kind of used an analogy of writing a book. So each time we get together, it'll be kind of like a chapter. And at the end of this, there'll be 18 chapters, and we'll be kind of handing that over with a recommendation to the city. So, we want to be mindful of our time together. Like Jenny said, we're going to start on time, we're going to end on time. But we want people to feel comfortable, speaking up. All voices here are valued. And we want to make sure that everyone gets to a level of comfort where you do feel comfortable talking. And kind of along the same line of the kind of having the co-chairs in the big group, what we kind of decided with these name tags so that we can kind of keep track of the time, we're not talking over each other and so forth. When you want to go ahead and speak, you just kind of flip this up, and we'll try to keep track of who's doing that and when. We'll try to kind of get to your responses kind of in that order. We'll kind of see how that works.
So these meetings are public meetings, but they're not public hearings. So we're being recorded right now, and it will be posted on whatdoyouthinkmac.org. We are really excited to hear from all of us in this room, but we right now, because of the size of our committee, we don't have time to listen to the audience during these meetings. Anyone in the audience who have great ideas, please email the staff at whatdoyouthinkmac.org. And because we do want to hear from the community, we just don't have time in these meetings. So if you know people who have lots of great ideas, please listen to them, and also encourage them to go to the website. But while we're here, we're just going to stick to this circle. Let's see. I think we're ready to move on to.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna go around the room, and just real quick, everyone's gonna say their name and how long they've lived in McMinnville. That's it, though. Okay.
Can we start?
Of course I do.
Okay.
I'm Katrin McGuire, and I'm from Salem, but I've lived in McMinnville 2 times. Once to go to Linfield College in the late 90s, and this time for about 4 years.
Hey, my name is Marty Purdy, and I've lived here for over 30 years.
I'm Karen Ostran. I moved here in 2012.
I'm Murilo Martins. I moved from Brazil in 2005 and have been in McMinnville for 15 years.
I'm Sarah Tukalski, and I've been here for 19 years.
Kevin Chambers. I grew up here, moved away for college in a few years, and then moved back.
Miriam Vargas Corona. I've lived here almost 6 years.
BJ Barlow. I grew up in McMinnville. I've lived here since 1990.
Anna Barsadi, grew up here, moved back, 13 years ago.
Wendy Whiteson, and I've been here 28 years.
Jenny Berg, 18 years.
Susan Muir, 2.5.
Ann Lane, I was born and raised here, left for a good jagged time, and have been back for 19 years.
Andrew Jones, 16 years.
Ryan McIrvin, 20 years.
Diane Shea, I was born and raised here, took a 10-year break.
Ronnie Lucas, and I've been here for 27 years.
Mike Limba, I've been here 3 years.
I'm Zach Geary, and I too was born here, and other than the time I spent at college, I've lived here, so that puts me at 30 years.
Boy, there's a trend here. Lisa Macy Baker, born and raised, left for a bit of time, and came back, boy, about a year after Anna did.
Yeah, now we're gonna do a rapid fire icebreaker where we are gonna read off yes or no questions. If your answer is yes, you'll stand up, and then we can see who answered yes, and then should we have them sit down right away or wait till the next question?
Probably easier to just sit back down.
Yes, you'll stand up, kind of, we'll see whose answer is yes, then you sit down and we'll read off the next one. All right.
Okay. All right, here we go. Stand up if you have ever checked out a book from the McMinnville Public Library. For free.
All right. Stand up if you have ever been in the water in the aquatic center.
Mirror.
Not been in the water.
Okay. You have kids under the age of 10.
You have kids over the age of 10.
There you go.
You want me to do this? Sure. You know how many laps equal a mile on the track at the community center?
Only because I love it.
The answer is 13.
Oh, I was gonna say 10.
Was that the old high school?
Yeah. You swam at the old aquatic center prior to 1986.
I didn't.
You have a relative over the age of 70 living near or with you.
You have been to the Wortman Art Gallery.
You have ever had to pay an overdue fee for a library book.
You know how to find tiny tots.
Do you have to find your way back?
You were born in McMinnville.
You swim almost every day at the aquatic center.
You have played pickleball at the community center.
Oh. You speak a language other than English fluently.
You have attended a class or lecture for adults at the community center or the library or the senior center.
You have lived in McMinnville less than 3 years.
Oh, less. Oh, my turn. You have eaten lunch at the Wortman Cafe.
Oh, round of applause.
Oh, this is such a
Done.
good meal. Come on.
That was an option. How do we get into that?
Just show up. $5.
Potato
$5.
soup next Thursday.
Okay. You know what Libby is.
It's the library app. It's how you get ebooks, audiobooks. Right. You or your spouse has coached a youth sports team.
Okay, and last one. You have attended the summer concert.
This is just slow. Attended what?
I've ever had a summer concert.
Okay.
Just looking at my office window.
Yes.
So I'm sure we'll get to know each other a lot better, but that just kind of gave us a feel for who's been involved in what in the community. Now we're going to move to the community overview, and we're going to turn over some time to Jenny and Susan.
Okay, this is probably, I'm sorry, it's going to be hopefully the most boring thing we do, but there are some rules about the way we meet, and Meredith described the fact that we're recording the meeting. So this is from a really great guide that we put a link to on the whatdoyouthinkmac.org, or the Parks and Rec homepage will direct you there. It's called, I think it's called Governing Basics, and it's a publication put out by the League of Oregon Cities, and I used to work there, and we used to go around the state and train people on this kind of stuff. So I'm not an attorney, but what I'm going to talk to you about is the law that applies to us. So the first thing that you need to know about is the public meetings law, and there are certain things that we need to do as a committee to make sure that we follow those. I only copied 3 excerpts out of the guide, so if you are a local government wonk, and you want to read things about like home rule or budgeting or property taxes, it's an awesome read. And if you want to wonk out about it even more, give me a call because I would love to talk to you about it. But the public meetings piece, and then I also have given you something about public records, which you need to know about, and then there's a little bit about gift limitations that we're just going to cover pretty quickly. So why should we care about this? Because you're not elected officials, right? Well, actually, the law says any body that is advising elected officials also counts under the Oregon Public Meetings Law. So we have to comply with that. Luckily, the recording, which we're doing here, counts. We don't need to type minutes up as of, after this. That counts for us as official minutes of that. We post your agendas in 2 public locations so that the public can have access to knowing that you meet. And we also post it online. It's also on the city's general calendar webpage, and it'll show up there showing a meeting on the first Thursday of every month. So we are required to do that piece of it. As Meredith mentioned, it's a public meeting, so that means it's open to the public, but the law does not require that you take public testimony at these things. There may be times as we're going through this process that you do want to hear from the public and you want the staff to schedule an open house or something that we notice to all the public, and we'll put in there this is an opportunity for participation, and we're happy to do that. But if it's not on the agenda, we wouldn't take public testimony or have a public hearing as part of that. So that is the requirements that we're under for the public meeting law, and that is the first 4 pages of your handout. The next thing I want to talk about is what you need to know about public records. So this is page 13 at the bottom of the page here. So everything that this committee does is subject to public meeting law, and the paperwork and the materials that we present to you are considered public records. When you do have an attorney come speak with you, they will say if you're writing notes on your paper here as a committee, that becomes a public record. If you're emailing from your personal address out to your friends and neighbors about the committee work that you're doing, that becomes a public record, which is why we've set up that web page for you to really call home. So if people are starting to send you materials, feel free to send it to us. Our systems at the city are set up to archive these materials. So if we're included in that loop, you are doing everything you need to do to make sure that your records are being retained. We have a proper, we actually go through, and when records expire, we shred them and get rid of them after the law says we can dispose of them. So we're set up to do that. Point everybody towards the web page to submit information. If you start getting information, we can try and do some more outreach to people to let them know to direct it to that web page as a place to give us information. But if you get anything from us, know our systems are handling it, and we're archiving it, and we're maintaining it. So all of your agendas, anything that you get from us is backed up. You don't need to worry about keeping that. And at the end, I think, Zach, when you were on the planning commission, you probably had to do this. If you had a notebook of materials that you were keeping notes on, plan on handing that to us at the end of your term, at the end of 18 months, and we will properly store that for you. So if anyone says, hey, what was that? I want to know what that committee did. I want to ask the city for those records, then we will archive it properly for you and make sure that happens. So sometimes when this part of the law gets unveiled, people are like, oh no, I'm not writing notes, I'm not taking, because I don't want to worry about it. But keep it simple. Don't be afraid to take notes. Just know at the end, give us your notebook and we'll archive it for you properly. And if you want to take copies of anything, you can do that too. So you're in a different role now that you're on this committee and that you're advisory to the city council. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But there are some structures related to doing the business of the public transparently, and so that the public can have access to it. So you're now a part of that group that gets to do that. So Ryan gets to do that every day too at the school district, so not new for him. So the next page, this one is about gifts. So Marty, are you okay if I pick on you a little bit?
Sure.
If Marty calls you and tells you the pickleball club wants to take you out to dinner to tell you how many courts he would like to see in the new community center related to pickleball and offers to pick up the tab, don't do that. So you cannot take gifts worth more than $50 in a calendar year from any one source that may reasonably have an administrative issue in front of you. So we are subject to the same thing. If I go out to coffee with one of you, I will pick up my own tab. It's just so I don't have to keep track of math and worry about when I get to the $50 threshold. It's just easier that way. But just know, if I don't think that will happen with you all. I don't see that as a high risk for this group, but just know that that is one of the laws that applies to you as a public group. Ryan, does that happen to you every day? Yeah. So it's this is a little different level of responsibility with some people might think of it as red tape, some people might think of it as bureaucracy, but the real reason that all of these things are in place is so that the business of the public can happen transparently and that people can have access to the decision makers of the community and make sure that everything is happening in the public view. So I went over a lot of complex things pretty quickly because it's kind of dry. Read this stuff if you have any questions. We can either plug you into the city's attorney to get more specific answers, or go online and look at the local government basics handout that we have on there. Anybody have any questions about that?
What's Ryan's job?
Yeah, Ryan, what do you do?
Ryan?
I'm the athletic director of the high school.
Oh, okay.
So he's considered a public employee just like the city folks are. Yeah. And Zach has had to comply with these for years being on the city council, and many of you, maybe if you served on the city's budget committee or planning commission, I don't know if any of you have, these laws apply to you on that, in that role as well. So give us a call if you have any questions about it.
Nobody's offered to buy the copy.
Just because they all know the rules. Okay, so we will also tonight be giving a little bit of history. Tonight's kind of more of the, we'll be getting into the meat of the actual project at the next meeting, but we want to set the stage for a lot of things tonight. So how you all ended up here to some extent. So you all filled out the applications to be part of this committee. We actually received 40 applications, and it's a 20-person committee. We were pretty pleased about that level of interest in this committee. Some of you were appointed. Others had the benefit of a speed interview process where we learn more about you, and you learn more about the committee. And I say that as you had the benefit of that because there are some people that are coming to the table who have maybe heard a few of these things that I'll say. So selections for the committee were based on the MacTown 2032 priority of engagement and inclusion. So we looked at all different types of interests and activities and where you lived and other types of things to make decisions. We also were looking for people with the capacity to engage effectively, participate fully, share perspectives, critically evaluate, creatively and dynamically problem solve, and commit to improving outcomes and furthering MacTown 2032. And if you haven't read that document, the 2032 document that just outlines the priorities, I highly recommend you do so because we're going to be referring to it quite a bit. Zach's gonna, in a little bit, he'll talk a little bit more about MacTown 2032. And then, so we made some decisions based on those criteria to populate these tables, and then through a city council resolution, you were all appointed and directed to use MacTown 2032 as a filter for decision making. And you were empowered to be bold and lead the way through thoughtful input, focus, and leadership. So that is your charge on a philosophical level.
All right, now we're going to have a discussion about the ground rules for our committee because we have none right now. So first, we were going to turn over the time to Kitri because she was going to share some about opportunity mindset, which she uses at her job. She's going to kind of explain it all to us.
Absolutely. So my understanding is that I have 3 minutes. So
we are doing great on time.
Yeah,
so
this will be fast. So fast.
We're ahead of time.
Yeah, we're doing great.
I'm going to hand these out. I don't think that I printed enough for everybody. There's 20 here, but if you don't get one and you would like one, let me know and I'll bring one to the next meeting. So I'm Kitri, and I have the pleasure of serving this city through a creative agency, the Local Tourism Board, Visit McMinnville. We are a contractor of the city. We're one of 4 economic development organizations within the city of McMinnville. So we are very familiar with the MacTown 2032 plan, because one of the main items in there is to make sure that this is a top visitor destination where people come and they want to spend their time, but more specifically their money here in McMinnville, and that creates jobs and economic opportunity for the people who live here. So we have a big charge ahead of us. We have this big task over the next 22 years to improve economic development for the city, and we're an office of 2 people. And that can be a real challenge. But one of the things that we do at our office is choose to operate with a sense of opportunity and possibility and not fear. And we call each other out fairly often where we say, no, that feels like an emotional, fearful response. Let's turn it around. How can we do what we need to do? So there's 2 sides to that for us. One of them is making sure that we're planning really well and that we have a strategic plan that meets the measure of success that the city sets before us. And by doing that, we know what we're supposed to be doing. We know what we can say no to. We know what we should absolutely embrace. And it keeps us streamlined and laser focused on our goal. But we have a lot of crazy ideas and fun ideas. We are a creative agency. That's what we do. It's our job to make beautiful things that make people interested in McMinnville and get them to come here and spend their money. So one of the exercises that we use a lot in our office is this idea of a propelling question. And I love that idea, that it's a question that you're asking yourself that's propelling you into some sort of positive future. And it goes a little something like this. How can we enter opportunity here when we have enter constraint here? And we always say this in our office, we can if. And we say this to each other at least 10 times a day. Well, we can do that if we think of it in a different way, if we tap a different resource, if we inspire another committee to take up that work, if we resource it in a creative way. And it's a really fun exercise just to think about a task that's before us that we want to do to fulfill a strategic mission that we've set before ourselves, and make it happen in a way that feels right for us and for the city that we're serving. And so I know I only have 3 minutes, but I just wanted to give us all a copy of this because I think it's really an interesting exercise. And I use it in my personal life too. So it's like, how can we go on a family vacation this summer when we have no money? You know? Well, we can if we invite our parents along or something. Or we can if we set aside $20 a week to blah, 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 you know? And so when you start thinking about it in that way, it makes things feel possible. It makes things feel like they can be tackled, even if they're really, really big, because you're choosing to propel yourself forward and think of it in a different way. So that's all that I was brought here to talk about, except for my thoughtful are big things that we're supposed to be doing.
Oh yes, that too. The be bold.
Yes.
And lead the way with thoughtful input, focus, and
That's
leadership.
right. That's the other reason I'm here. Thank you very much.
All right, so I think our next exercise, we're going to have a little more discussion about the ground rules. We have a little exercise to go over. So they're putting up some.
If you didn't know the difference between me and Jenny.
So
Part of our diversity.
Okay. So there are 3 3 posters there with possible rules for us to consider. So the idea here is we want to have some structure to our meetings just to keep it orderly and efficient, productive. So to kind of start that process, we have the 3 posters on the wall there that have some things to consider, some rules to consider. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to use the dots.
Yes.
Or
Yeah. So we're gonna all get dots, and you're gonna vote on the ones that you think are the most important. It's gonna be a quick way to narrow down what our rules are gonna be. And if you have any, you think some are missing, there's a blank paper that you can write some up, and then people can vote on that.
Can everyone read those?
I think we'll have to get up.
Okay, so we'll take a few minutes and kind of review those a little closer.
So these are just, you can Google, of course, committee rule examples. These are just purely like from the internet. It's not, nobody took any, like, oh, this is what they should be. It was just to sort of prime the pump. But if you have others that you think should be there, we can actually, if people want to yell out ideas, I can write them down.
Do you want us to read through them? Since
I didn't know if we were gonna get up and.
You are in a minute.
Oh,
okay.
But I just want to make sure that people have the opportunity to put their own ideas up there too. You don't have to choose from these, but you can.
I got it.
I'm nearly over.
Diane, do you want to read them out loud for all of us?
I would love to.
I knew it.
Thank you.
Okay, show up on time and come prepared. Stay mentally and physically present. Contribute to meeting goals. Let everyone participate. Listen with an open mind. Think before speaking. Stay on point and on time. Attack the problem, not the person. Close decision and identify action items. Record outcomes and follow up. Everyone participate, no one dominate. Share the airtime, one speaker at a time. Success depends on participation. Share ideas, ask questions, draw others out. Share your unique perspective. Allow every voice to be heard. Be generative and use yes and, not yes but. Listen for understanding, inquire, ask before you advocate, persuade. Treat everything you hear as an opportunity to learn and grow. Challenge cherished beliefs. Seek common ground and understanding, not problems and conflict. Disagree without being disagreeable. Be positive, non-judgmental, and open to new ideas. Speak your truth without blame or judgment. Be intrigued by the difference you hear. Stay open to new ways of doing things. Ask what's possible, not what's wrong. Keep asking. Listen for the future to emerge. Stay at the strategic level, out of the operational. Staying on schedule is everyone's responsibility. Honor time limits. Stay out of the weeds and the swamps. And confidentiality, whatever is said, written in the room, stays in the room.
That one doesn't.
Right,
yeah.
cross that one.
As I said, they were just copied from the internet.
So does anyone have any ideas that you feel like are missing that you want to write, you have written up on that blank form?
And again, this is just to get us started. We can always, add later on, but we just want to kind of set some basic ground rules just to kind of get the process rolling today. So.
And the idea is we'll have this up at every meeting so you can refer to your ground rules. Easier to point at something as an example.
Ready to write a
process that if you need to. There's a lot of rules to consider, or think of something else that hasn't been listed. And maybe think of like in other groups that you've been in, like other committees or something, like a rule that worked well for you in that committee. You know, maybe share that with this group.
I do think some of them could be consolidated, like let everyone participate one speaker at a time and allow every voice to be heard. It's kind of one. So when we're voting, maybe all vote at the same spot.
We can give you all markers too if you want to just start getting up and moving around and editing them yourselves. You want to try that?
And if so, if they see one, so we all have 3 dots, right? So it's here in a few minutes. Would we just put the dots next to that rule? Just kind of put it near so you can see which dot you're addressing. It's like on the same line there.
So we're by the 3 ones that we think are the most important.
Yes.
Or feel free to add one.
So we can vote for that one again.
No.
Okay.
The first dot is always the hardest.
First dot's always the hardest. All right, well.
Go, kids, go.
Go ahead and just kind of, that's your comfortable.
Yeah.
BJ, I'll just put yours up for you. Marilla, I can take yours too. Don't worry.
Bargaining for dots.
I got the most dots.
Hey, Zach, I want to know why your name is so much bigger than all of ours.
I wrote
yours.
Yeah, exactly. You're being strategic, aren't you?
I am in agreement with all of them.
Yes.
Cut the dots
I
into
need.
right. Cut the dots. It's smart. Then you
I'm
can
happy
see
with
what
any of them that show up.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
Like, it's kind of the same as this one. Like, stay at like solving problems instead of like trying to. For me, it's like being a hypothetical. Like, yeah.
Okay.
Versus like saying, well, we're doing this. Jump in. Versus like, that's what it means.
Okay.
On the other day.
I'm just going to vote for one.
Because I put it down and I don't know if you guys, but I
What do you want?
and put them. But I don't know if that is
Yeah, like those tricky, like some of them, particularly the tiny ones, but then.
Not much.
kept going back to
Just when you get comfy.
I don't know what happened. Front door.
I took a tour when, I guess last year. So not in a while, not since the lease. We walked by all the time.
Tracking your dots.
How are you?
Change it for the double jib.
Well, I was
Change the line.
kind of they're all good ones, except, you know, maybe that last one.
Yeah.
They're next to
Well, and we have two.
4 or 5 minutes.
Improv.
That's what I'm doing. Yes, and. Yes, and. I'm having a good time.
Somebody else.
I'm gonna write my hand. Where's the pen? I wanna write my hand.
What color would you like?
Black, just because they're always black. Is that all
I'll be
right?
boring.
Sorry. You could use that same paper.
registration and then
It's a lot more class.
Logic came out.
But Zach, it's tough when, I mean, everybody already voted.
Thank you. Nope.
I know, it's a little tough to write it down when it's like, everybody's voted already.
Yeah, we got people right away.
Well, it's not, because nobody voted on
It's
it.
like, I would say 60% Latinx, over half. Oh, just getting less.
Oh, wait a minute.
I know, I'm sorry, I totally forgot. And then I was like, oh, I should, but we're gonna do it again.
It's more like,
We're gonna make it
I was
a.
at Leslie Line on Saturday night. You know what'd be really fun? Go to pick 'em all.
Yeah.
So now we only have 4. Yeah.
Well, I think we're gonna do it. 12. And then it was like another for like the materials It was super like good though. It was cool. And he does such a good job. He like so when he got into proper and he basically got it finally got his date set. Yeah. So he like read his essay and his plan like showed on his report card. And then like read it.
So, what, we basically just looked and did anything with 3 or more dots is definitive. So show up on time and come prepared, listen with an open mind, success depends on participation, challenge cherished beliefs, seek common ground and understanding, be intrigued by the difference you hear, stay open to new ways of doing things, stay at the strategic level. Does anybody want to really
Defend something that
defend something else that they want to see?
I really like the assume good intent. I like that.
Me too.
I do too. Showed up late. How many people want it to be there?
Coupled with the phones up.
Well, so we were just talking about the phone, so we really like the idea, thank you for that, with the phones off. The only caveat might be that we might use the phone once in a while for a timer to keep us on track or during an exercise or something, but I like the phone off. I don't know if I can get 3 or not.
Oh, that's true. It just needs 3 dots. It needs 3 votes.
Or so, yeah.
No, she has a dog. She was
$5.
Not 50.
Well done, right there.
I don't want to write it down on my
Something less
computer.
than 50. Yeah. Now, really, if somebody wants to use it.
You didn't keep going any others that you
I
liked.
got the 2 I really liked, yeah.
I think we have 3.
For both of them?
2. Yeah, for both.
Could we do phone silent?
I like them both.
Phones to silent is what you mean, right? Phones to silent.
Yeah.
Tweets and stuff.
Silent,
Yeah.
not off. There's a big difference there.
I left mine on my counter, so.
If you assume good intent about what somebody is doing on their phone. No, it's really important, I swear.
I don't have strong feelings. I assume that somebody's got something to kind of manage also. They're here in the room also.
I just like silent because I know, people have families and, from time to time maybe something important, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're all adults and I think.
I feel like some of these just kind of are respect in general. So assume like the phone, it's kind of like show up on time and come prepared. We have to kind of assume that if we all want to be part of this committee, that we're going to be respectful of the committee
Yeah.
without getting specific about how we do that.
What if we added show up on time, come prepared, and be present?
Yeah.
Because that could cover the phones off, like you're present, if some, you know.
Says the yoga teacher. Present.
So does anyone else want to comment on one of the ones they voted for that only has 1 or 2 dots?
Okay.
All right, we'll put these on a poster for your next meeting.
Okay, and then we'll put them up there so it's a reminder as we kind of move along in the process. Okay, great.
We are going to turn time over to Zach to talk about MacTown 2032.
Okay, I'm Zach Geary, currently serving 4 years term at McMinnville City Council, so thank you. And I'll be joining us for this big lift. I felt pretty passionate about this endeavor for many reasons that I think we all share here, but some context for what the City Council finds really important about everyone here and this process and kind of how we view all these decisions. And the strategic MacTown 2032 is a mouthful, but it's really got our document that was kind of the first big citywide, really intentional at being really inclusive and forward-thinking, big citywide strategic planning session for the whole city. So we had a multitude of groups and multiple different phases where we tried to bring everyone in, and we had groups of sort of the old guard, the new guard, the business, the whatever, all sorts of different groups representing and just talking about what do you love, what do you want to see, how do we get there, what's important, what are we not thinking about, what are we not talking about. We made sure that those groups are at the table in their own individual silos being productive, and then mixing them all together and being productive. And sort of McMinnville has this long history and tradition of, well, traditions, right, of being really successful planners. We've got Mac Water Light, they did a great job, we're going to be set for a long time. All these sorts of institutions have really thought multiple steps down the way in generations, and we kind of said, hey, well, we want a chance to ask those questions. We want a chance to be able to perform those also for all the future McMinnvillians, both the one-night stayers and the lifetime residents that haven't even been born yet, and raising children here or just moving here and bringing family here. It's a really unique opportunity to get that, and this is a really unique opportunity to sink our teeth into something we can. I mean, we're all passionate about what the mission is, but I'm really excited about this process. So all the documents we get in front of us, from buying a new piece of equipment for Public Works to forming this committee, get put through the lens of that MacTown 2032 strategic document. It just highlights one line from it, and this is how we're making sure we're paying attention to what all those citizens who made that big lift thought was really important, and not just kind of going off on our own, us 6 councilors and our mayor just trying to do what we want to do on a yearly basis. But our heads really up, thinking about what's really important, and what was told to us was really important, and we're staying on that mission. And so if it doesn't relate to what's on that piece of paper, it's not important. So we're going to make sure we're hitting as many of those things as we can, and that we're able to be really intentional with that big lift. And so I want to thank everyone at the table, and I know the council wants to thank everyone at the table. And when we're done this 18-month process, this is going to go back in front of the council, and we kind of have to show them that this is the process that we went through, and it was ugly and crazy, and we made this really beautiful idea, and we're going to do it. And in my mind, I'm so excited for the shovel in the ground, and this really all is going to tie into that process. So thank you for being here. I know, like I said, a lot of times it's a big lift, but the staff is ready to make it fun. Our chairs or co-chairs are going to make it really fun. If you have any questions about the process or MacTown 2032 or anything in general, you can ask me. If you don't want to ask staff, you can ask staff. They'll actually give you a good answer. So anything you want to know about the public process, I'm happy to help. But again, a big thank you to you guys. I'm elected just to represent you guys in the city's process, and here you all are doing hard work with us, so it's really cool. Thank you.
When was it written?
2019, I think we published it. 2018 went through the big.
January of 2019.
2019, yep. So 2018 we went through the big lift, and even in 2017 we were putting the framework together. The council was on sort of a yearly, what are we going to do this year? And in February we finally published a list, and by December we tried to get all the things done, and then we would make a new list. And so it became a real opportunity to pick our head up as high as we could and bring the city in with us for sort of a next long-term vision. And so, in 2032, however many years that is, only 12 years away now, these are all the things we want to get done. Taking a big look at, what led us to here was taking a big look at our facility burden, if you will. Right? We have hard decisions to make, and how are we going to do it? And ideally, we turn it into something, a really unique opportunity to move forward, but that was part of what I was asking these questions. So.
Perfect segue, I think, to what I'm going to talk about, which is the phase 1 of the building report and building on the MacTown 2032. At the same time, I think there's been, for many, many, many years, there's been a dialogue in the community about facilities, particularly this facility, the Aquatic Center, the Senior Center, the library, the fire station has had a lot of conversations about it in terms of what are we doing with those buildings and how are we upkeeping them. The city of McMinnville does not have a facilities manager. Jenny is the facilities manager at the library. The managers sitting in the back of the room are the managers in their facility, and Ann as well. So we don't have a centralized look at facilities. So the process that Zach mentioned, we actually hired a firm to go through all the buildings and look at how much deferred maintenance we had in, I think it was 57 buildings they looked at, from restrooms in the parks to these buildings to other buildings. And the city manager took for a work session to the city council, I think in early 2019, a worksheet where the executive team had looked at which buildings do we get a return on investment if we put them on a preventative maintenance plan. Which ones do we need to make some pretty serious investments in order to keep that going, those buildings going? And then which ones are we not going to get a return on investment? And the Parks and Rec buildings were the ones that were not getting a great return on investment, along with a couple of other buildings. If anybody's been out to the public workshops, you know that they have some buildings out there that are in disrepair as well, but they aren't available and open to the public. So the Parks and Rec buildings were the first ones that sort of hit that mark of we're not going to get a return on investment. And those of you who know the facilities very well know that we occasionally have buckets sitting out when it's raining. If you're on the pool deck, you know there's regular leaks. If you're in the pool, you know there's regular leaks with the roof there, and we got a pretty serious problem over there. The same thing with this building here, and the senior center is newer. So given that, what are we going to have a return on investment? The council funded what we called phase 1 of a Parks and Rec study at the buildings, and that many of you probably participated in that. We had a consultant named Ken Ballard come in, and we did a large public involvement process. It was huge. We went out in the parks. We were canvassing everywhere to try and get people to let us know what they wanted to see programming wise in the Parks and Rec facilities, and then facility wise. We just asked a bunch of questions. Really tried to engage with the community in that, and had a good turnout for that public involvement piece. And from that, the consultant looked at, proposed a plan for our Parks and Rec of what we want to do going forward. And the council accepted that first draft, phase 1 of a scale and scope of programming for Parks and Rec for the immediate future, the sort of near, a little bit further out. I think it was 5 to 10 years was the second piece, and then further out. And that started to map a path for us. And we had a work session in this building, and Zach actually asked the consultants, as he talks about the shovel in the ground, how soon till we put a shovel in the ground on some of these things? And I think it was about a year ago, and the answer that he was given was 3 to 5 years. And here we are about a year later, starting with this group. At the same time, the other facilities that were either in the red or yellow bubbles, the no return on investment or needed some significant input, we're starting to also realize that we needed to do some work on those. And so during one of our work sessions, the city council said, we think this is great that you're looking at the 3 Parks and Rec buildings, but we want you to include some other city buildings that might be having some issues in the near future and that we need to think strategically for. Are we going to invest in these facilities, or are we going to look at something bigger? And so that's when the library got wrapped into the process, as did fire admin offices. So we're not talking about a fire station, but we're talking about the admin offices where the fire marshal and the fire chief are, and then also City Hall got wrapped into that piece of it. So we finished that project. We got a lot of great feedback from the community and council as part of that. And then we started on phase 2, which is what you all are going to help us with, which is looking at the library and the recreation facilities and also some small admin functions, and think about what's the right level of programming that we want to do for this community for the next 30 years for those facilities. What's the right spaces for those programs for the next 30 years for our community. And then we're also going to have you look at how we fund those as well. So as you all know, we started forming the committee and made sure that we grabbed all of you with different perspectives. And here we are with an 18-month timeline in front of us to get to what we think will be the end of phase 2. And then phase 3 will be a conversation with the community about funding. So that's how we got here today. I think that's it for me on this piece.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Now we're going to do calendar. Jenny's going to talk about a calendar.
Please feel free to ask questions at any point in time too. I mean, this meeting is really about, getting you up to speed on what's happened. And hopefully, I think actually after this piece that I discuss, those will be the primary pieces of information that we have prepared. So if you have any questions at that point, I think it seems like probably a good time to jump in. We should have put not tentative dates. These are the actual dates and the tentative chapters and the top part is taken straight from the City Council resolution about what you are charged with doing. And then, except for that last sentence there, the final product of the committee is expected to be a written report to the City Council on findings and recommendations on moving forward. That's one of the things that we did talk about at the interviews that some of you had, that we're not talking about that we're going to be shovel ready by the end. We're not talking about starting that process. The final product of this group is here's what we figured out, what we think the community what you should do for the community based on all the input that we've received. That's what we're assuming at this point in time is the product at the end of the 18 months. Susan early on did a great job of focusing that we're gonna have these sort of sections. The first is going to be talking about programming. One of the things that was because the study was partially a facilities study, people started thinking immediately about buildings, but really it's about what do we do in those buildings and what does the community want within those buildings. Does the community want story times all hours of the day? Does the community want what would be an example of some
special gymnastics room?
Thank you, special gymnastics room. And so we'll be taking the first quite a few meetings, either talking about, you'll be receiving a lot of information about here's what the information that we have received so far from the community. And that's going to be possibly greater reaching than we can actually manage, but how do we take all of that information and decide, okay, this is what we think would be, I actually mean all of you, would be best for the community. And so looking at that, programming focused meetings for those dates, and part of the reason we wanted to do so that you have all of the dates when you're expected to be here in front of you. So these dates are here. We are not having a meeting on July 2nd. That's the only one that we have canceled at this point. So introduction to the project, that's what's happening right now. Overview of the Parks and Recreation Facilities and Program Study, which you've already received links to, but there'll be more information coming from the Parks and Rec staff. overview of the library previous surveys and surveys that we will be doing and need. So we're not going to have the same level of assessment that Parks and Rec had in terms of their report, but you will be presented with, here's what the information that we've received from the community about the programs that they want to see at the library. There will be panel discussions about diversity and inclusion so that we get those voices at the table. Short and long-term programming, so we have kind of we want to hear from you all, okay, for the next couple years, before we actually have new buildings, what should we be focusing on? And then what do we want to look for in the future so that we know what we hope to build? You'll also get history of the various buildings and services, and then hopefully at the end of that, decisions will be made by this group about the best programs for our community. And then that will be a really good starting point to lead us into the building-focused meetings. And those will be, then we'll have the architects come in and talk about, and also builders and planners and whatnot, talk about what are the sites where these buildings will, so when you have an idea about what programs you want, then the experts will be able to say, well, if you want that, you need this much square footage. And if you want that much square footage, here's the places where you might be able to do that. So we'll hear from those experts, both city staff and architects and other experts and professionals. So that will be, we'll talk about what the buildable lands are, what the site selection criteria can and should be, and you'll have a lot of input onto that. And then when you get all of that information, then you'll have a chance to say, okay, then we think you should pursue these sites to investigate those further, and then that would be, at the end of that would be likelihood of a decision made about what sites to pursue or site to pursue. Do you have anything you want to add to that? No?
Nope.
Okay. And then after that, then we'll look at, okay, we can if, in terms of, oh, okay, well, we just decided that the community should have all of these things, and how can we do that? And we'll get different input from city staff and others saying, here's what you need to think about if here are different ways of fundraising. Here are different, like the bake sale or something. No, not a bake. It's going to be a little bit bigger the price tag than that. Different ways that such facilities and programs might possibly be paid for. And that's on down the future. So that gives you a basic gist of it. We have not figured this all out bit by bit 18 months along. If we had, we wouldn't have you sitting at the tables. This is a process that we're going through. Anything to add or questions? Oh.
So what is the inclusion of the county regarding in the plans for the city and at the state level? What has, the county has plans obviously to Yamhill County. Has that been included in kind of the plans of what the city wants to do regarding buildings, enrichment programs?
Anybody, the staff may want to chime in on this. I can answer from Parks and Rec's perspective. The county does a good job of open space out in the unincorporated areas of Yamhill County, but they don't offer programs or have facilities like this that do these kinds of services outside the city. So one of the things that Ken Ballard looked at in the first phase of the study was whether or not a district might make sense for us. And so you can read some more information there. Would we, and we're having this conversation as a city, and Zach has a lot more information about that related to a fire district. If you expand your boundaries and think about who might use it, does that provide us any benefit by bringing those voters or those taxpayers or those potential users into the mix? the council was pretty interested in hearing the answer to that question during phase 1 from the consultant, and I don't think it's off the table, but their answer was basically that's a big, huge process just for Parks and Rec to think about that, not even thinking about a library district or including that in it. That's a big, long process, and we have a pretty small population here for that. They did a study over in Redmond, and it said there that you needed a draw of 60,000 in order to make a district worthwhile. And so that's sort of the findings on the first phase of it. I don't know if you have anything to add about a library district. Or Zach, if you have anything to add about districting.
A little bit about districting, and then I think my answer to your question would be, we got to this point because we needed some answers to some questions we had. And it was in that facilities assessment that came about, right? We've got this problem with existing facilities that are costing an enormous amount of money, and we're not seeing a great return on those. How can we be better stewards of taxpayer dollars and take this chance to offer better programming or enhance and make a new future for the programming for City of McMinnville? And I think how that plays with county allies, state allies, I think we have to just know the options, districting, those certain things. I think we have to answer the question first, and then we have to go out and say, this is what we're going to do. How does that interact with your plans, county? How does it interact with your plans, state, Oregon? And because we're 18 months before we're done, we have an answer to give back to council, right? And then it's however long we're going to take, and then it's however long it takes to raise the money to do it, and then we got to find the place, and then we got to. So we got a long road ahead of us. To me, the first step is to, with all the options on the table, answer the question, and then let other people get on board. Does that make sense? Yeah.
The other place it might come up is part of the fee conversation. Some of you probably know we charge a fee differential for people who live outside the city for some things. We're not consistent about it, but we may talk about that and ask your advice on that as we're getting to that financial piece. So that would be another component of it. Is it the city's role to subsidize those people that don't pay property taxes, that support about half of our costs for operation, or do we need to charge a even higher amount than what we do for those folks that don't live in the city? Good conversations.
Susan, did you want to mention about the tours?
Yes. Thank you. One of the other pieces of the city council work that I forgot to mention was a pretty big milestone at towards the end of phase 1, when they were looking at the return on investment and they were looking at the proposal by the consultant. They said, we want to give you direction to go forward and look for a combined facility, aquatic center and community center, but keep the senior center the way it is with some small expansions. So that was one piece of direction that they already have given us, is look at one joint facility. And the reason that came up was because shared staff is a component of the cost of having overhead in these buildings. And so the idea might be we would be able to save on some of those if we had a joint counter. Right now we have 3 counters that we staff with 3 people, more than that. But what we wanted to make sure is that you have an opportunity to tour any of the facilities. Because you're only meeting 2 hours a month, we didn't want to take the committee time to do that, but we want to make sure that everybody has access to it if they would like. So the front desk staff said all of our facilities are prepared for people to walk in and say they're a part of the Enrichment Services Advisory Committee, and you can do a self-guided tour in the areas that you can access as public. We also want to encourage you to contact the staff of each facility and set something up if you'd like a more hands-on guided tour with, to see the basement rooms that public can't get into, or the chlorine, look through the chlorine window or something like that. So if you want to look at more of those pieces of it, the managers of Parks and Rec happen to be in the room. Rob Porter, Steve Ganser, and Katie Noyd are here along with Ann Lane. Any one of these folks can give you a tour of the facilities. You can find our contact information, and Jenny's staff as well is prepared to give you tours of those facilities. So we want to encourage you on your own to stop by those facilities and do a tour. And if you'd like to have a guided tour before one of these meetings or any convenient time, just let us know, and we're happy to do that with you.
And that reminds me, we may also, in the process in these future meetings, there may be other examples of community centers, aquatic centers, libraries that come up. And we've debated about the idea of trying to arrange an outing at some point in time where we look at a couple of those, and that may be an option. You're also, of course, welcome to do that on your own in public place, public space.
All right. Is there a list available somewhere? I'm sure there is, of all of the tourable buildings.
We will
for
put one
us?
together with the contact, how about with the contact information of who to call for a tour?
That would be fabulous.
Okay, yep, we can do that, email that to you.
Cool, thank you.
Yep. We also are keeping a list, like Jenny said, of those community center, aquatic center, library, joint facilities that we hear about around the region. So if you all know of any that you want us to add to that list, we're kind of doing a little research on each one of them to figure out when they were built and what the square footage is. So if you've been to any or you want to add any to that list, just email us the name of it and the location and we'll start putting that together.
All right, well, our next task here tonight was, as Susan mentioned, the name of the committee right now is rather lengthy. The Enrichment Services Advisory Committee. So to kind of make this our own, we thought it might make sense to come up with a different name and get people to think in on this. So what we've decided to do, we have, actually we're ahead of schedule, so we have quite a bit of time. Maybe count off by fours. We'll break up into 4 different groups, and then we'll use these poster boards around the room and just come up with ideas that you kind of resonate with you, that you like, maybe acronyms that you like. I already know there's one that you really like. I won't mention it.
What was that?
I can call it wrong. But maybe just make it our own, something that you like, and then we'll go ahead and share what we, maybe the top, I think 2 or 3 maybe, that each group has. We'll kind of share that, then we'll vote on that and come up with the name. So hopefully by the time we leave here today, we'll have a new name for our committee.
Or maybe the same, if that's what you guys
Yeah,
want.
or the same, yeah. So, do you want to?
Yes, so we'll do, okay, I'm 1.
Okay, 2.
3.
4.
1.
2.
3.
4.
1.
2.
3. 4.
Are we doing it?
No.
Are we doing? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2.
You're 4.
Whoops.
Wait, whoa. You're 4. Wendy's
Skip
staff.
one.
We're not
Oh,
doing
your
it.
staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't get
Okay,
it.
4.
Yeah.
1.
2.
I like this.
1.
All right, so we'll do, that's,
Sure.
so the green one's 1, that one's 2, 3, 4.
And we'll take how much time?
We have until 8:10.
So,
How long did we do?
Well, it might be shorter than that. 8:10 is when we want to have decided. So we'll be
a week, 5 minutes or so.
Hey, Rob. We actually can go a little
Yeah.
longer.
Yeah. What's in the back?
We'll just
One
see
is
in the
green.
conversation.
Okay. So,
Do we want to have a staff?
That's all mine.
Marty, you're over there.
Marty's the highest number on there. There you go, Zach.
Marty, you're over there. I think. You guys are 4.
Okay, but my spells, all right.
they only end up with 3.
So usually I get
Oh.
What is it now?
I'll give them.
Yeah.
Verb, adjective, noun.
Well, I guess it's like what is kind of the name should represent what we're doing. So we can think of.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks.
She's already working on the list.
I'm trying to explain it now.
Was that helpful?
701.
Yeah.
I'm not very creative, so
What? I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah.
You use the phrase plan for the future.
Yeah, write it like that. Let's just write it like that.
Oh yeah, we can do this. Do you have this in a Word document?
I do, and I said, what I'm thinking I'll do is send it to John.
Yeah.
He's got it going.
Okay.
And then
I was a one. Yeah.
I would like to
Huddle with Anne because she's gonna handle it.
well, I'm just thinking, what if it's like
And do we still
2 hours?
Talking about the next
meeting is Parks and Rec, and then the following meeting could be library, about like, here's what we do now, here's what we're doing.
Well, I see how much time you want to set aside for them to brainstorm.
I was thinking an easy, like.
Because it'll be, I think
But it's like, it's hard to come up
You're
with
not
words. I was thinking
sure.
like, what, the better is, we did it like Parks and Rec, but with.
I've got
Also,
my
what you're
outline of what I'm gonna do, so.
How much time do you need?
Based on our last meeting, I gave myself a 20-minute window
For presentation.
for presentation.
Is that for everything?
That's
But it seems like it's on an
for
island,
Parks
and
and
we're
Rec.
using it now.
But I'm like this level.
So it's instead of, so activities instead of enrichment services, basically, is.
Like, we were gonna be done.
So, sort of community
And
activities.
I just thought, okay, well, firstly, we're gonna have more time than that.
I think we can.
Yeah.
But if we get an acronym.
So everybody's just like,
then-
oh, it makes more sense to.
I was like,
No one's gonna.
So it's sort of
So we
And then also the fact that we're not rushing.
Yeah.
We don't have, I mean, you guys had, this whole big session.
The other thing we have is the inclusion panel. I mean, I think that we should give them, that's a chunk of presenting and discussion.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's like there's a, just right there. So I guess, yes, we want to figure out how to divvy it up, but would it be,
I think so.
I
think so. I mean, what I've put together so far.
It almost seems like it doesn't disperse perfectly time and information.
Because for what I was thinking is
Okay, yeah, because we are community members, we're not, we have an idea,
we're planning for the future.
A whole lot to vote on. Yes.
But that just ensures that we don't just vote for our own only.
Okay. You can't?
No, you get 2 votes, so you gotta vote for yourself, and then you vote.
Or you can put 2 dots on your own.
Oh, then you
Is this part of the anti-bribery if I say, if I have NCAA basketball ticket for the girls, would that be a bribery? Okay.
We'll talk later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do I have a question? Oh, you have a question?
I have a question.
Can you say your name?
My name is Anna, and although it's very romantic to have my middle name here, Anna Kalina, I usually just go by Anna, so you know, it's okay. Back to the Future.
Right.
Back to the Future. I really like that. I didn't hear that said, Lisa, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all.
That might be a little bit of a logo infringement if, you want to go with that logo.
Back to the Future, but we couldn't come up with like the words that could go.
Okay. Okay.
Doesn't have to be an acronym. It's just a name, so it could be.
Well, what would the F be? Fun.
Oh, do we have to do all the letters?
You.
Doesn't have to be an acronym. It can just be a
Thank you,
name.
Anna. I like
It could say Ted.
Ted.
I mean, Anna Kalina.
Mine? 7310. No, 7359. I was like, 69.
So, in other words, I'm just going to.
As long as you know your phone number. It's just a button. All you guys are just a button.
I know.
Like Susan's lining up.
Which I was. I mean, I don't want to
That was yours.
Nice work, Anna.
Should be in
Bringing us up.
That way they're not lonely.
You're 1-5?
My direct line, 742.
I think it's like software. It's not really
I put games in there. You know what I'm saying?
Instead of her?
Yeah.
I do a lot of crosswords and I haven't run into it. You know, so.
Is anybody sitting on one dot like Anna did?
I'm sitting on a dot.
Super delegate.
Okay.
Does anyone want to?
I just had a,
Yes.
sorry. I thought when I heard the word cad, it's a man who behaves dishonorably, especially towards a woman.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
So it's good to have the phone available in certain cases.
I told you, Ryan. Sorry, that didn't come up in our.
Older generation.
Was that 2 A's or 1 A?
One.
Oh.
Well, that one's that.
Well, so is our slogan, and that's our name.
Oh, the Back to the Future is our slogan.
I like that.
Back to the future.
That's cool.
Slogan, logo, and.
Through the Mac.
So MacPack is the name and Mac to the Future is the slogan? Is that what you guys
Ooh,
just
that's
decided?
cool.
And then the hub is the graphic?
Yep.
Teamwork.
That collaboration.
Extra credit.
All right. Everybody good with that? Moving on? All right. That's it.
Oh, I guess, are we going to discuss, we talked about in the rules how we come to a consensus. Were we going to discuss consensus?
We did talk about
Do
that.
we want to address that at all now? Well, I guess what we had, when we'd met before,
Yeah.
we talked about if it was close and when we're deciding something, what would we do with that? And we were saying if it's really close like this, it would mean that we hadn't come to a decision because that means we've got to take it back and get more opinions from the community. With this, it's not as huge a deal as some of the other decisions we've been making. But does anyone have any ideas they wanted to share about that? Any thoughts? So we'll generally be voting, maybe always with dots, I don't know. But
We've got plenty of them.
yes. Okay.
All right, well, we're like 25 minutes ahead of our schedule, which is a good thing. Next, we just wanted to talk about our next meeting.
Sorry, I thought you were.
Oh, well, so we kind of already mentioned this on the front end, particularly for folks that aren't on the committee, they can communicate via email if they want to add, because we certainly want to hear from them, even though they may not be a committee member, they may have some really valuable information. So the email is the option we're recommending. And then Meredith and I will kind of make it a practice to kind of hang out for a few minutes after the meeting. If there's something you want to share with either one of us, more kind of one-on-one, that you're just not comfortable for whatever reason with the group, that's fine. So we'll try to make a practice of doing that.
The next meeting is March 5th, and we're going to meet here, but some of our meetings are going to be at the different locations. We're going to rotate so that we can naturally see them all and get used to them all. So I think we're going to open it up to any comments or questions now before we break. Anyone else? Anyone have any questions?
I have a quick, could be a ignorant question, but following Marty's comment down here about the county or state type deal, and specific to the library, how does Chemeketa's role in the library affect the overall operations or decisions that the city would make in regards to that facility?
Thank you for asking. I will talk about it more in the future, but so the Chemeketa Cooperative, it's there's 18 different city-funded libraries, and then there's and everybody that lives in the city pays a city tax for the library that goes to the library, and then they pay an additional tax, which is a CCRLS tax. If you do not live in the city, you pay just the CCRLS tax. And that then allows you some library services. And what ends up happening is CCRLS, then that's the Chemeketa Cooperative, then writes a check back to the city of McMinnville for their share of those taxes that were collected by CCRLS. So they, and then they also provide certain services, but it wouldn't, they don't really offer any funds for building or development or capital, nor would they have any input on here's what it should be like. Does that?
Yeah, so there's no barriers or regulations or obstacles that the city would have to overcome on an agreement that is previous in existence.
Correct.
I would say the only thing to keep in mind if we look at districting would be a compression scenario where, you know, if we, in a districting scenario, but I guess we wouldn't library district, so I wouldn't think that would come up. You know, just the tax burden, city residents versus county residents. When you look at districting, what other county residents are paying, you want to make sure you don't create a weird scenario with city residents getting compressed with district taxes.
Ryan.
This might be a down the road question, but you mentioned community input or going back. So throughout this process, like with the application process, I know that went out to a bunch of different people. Is there going to be like regular updates that, or do they have to go to the MAC 32 site, or will stuff be sent out to all members that have been involved with the Parks and Rec department in the past? I mean, how informed will people out? I mean, there's 30-some thousand people and there's 20 of us here. I mean, how informed will they be throughout all this?
Well, our plan for communication, we do a couple of things, and I'm sure there's more as we broaden that. One, the rec guide that probably everybody gets in the mail. There's one coming with a spread of the history of our facilities, and we'll be using that as a communication tool. That's one of the ways we recruited for the committee. That's one of the ways we got public input on phase one of it. So we'll use that piece of it, our webpage, the city's webpage, our social media. We did create what we kind of call an interested parties list of people who wanted to participate in this all along, but we haven't planned out how often we would communicate with them or anything like that. And we probably should do that. So.
But I think they could follow along at what DThinkMac.org, because we'll be posting kind of our recordings and minutes, our updates. And then I think as people ask you or the people on the committee, you're going to be the best advocates and explainers of what we're going on. And so I know you had this public records thing, but you should also feel free to provide those updates to those people. You're our best turnaround loud advocates for what we're doing. Loudspeaker.
And probably as a committee, we will, if we make some big decision, we'll say, hey, this is something we should make sure everyone knows about. And then at that point, we'll decide how and
I mean, ultimately, this is gonna go, something's gonna go before voters, and if
Right.
18 months from now is the first they, hear, it's gonna be hard. I mean, we're trying to generate public support.
We need buy-in
Yeah.
all along the way.
Yeah, we want to be as transparent as we can through this whole process, so those are really good points you bring up.
And we think about that too, the election point, because for those of you that don't know, when the city council decides to put something on the ballot, your city staff is cut off. We can no longer produce any materials for a ballot measure. We cannot participate in campaigning for it. We are prohibited from state law for doing anything. So part of what we are building is a record, and we think about that all the time. And so you all are our best representatives of the community. If there's something that you ask a question like, how does the county work with this? How does Chemeketa work with this? These are the kinds of things that we will take and say, okay, we should probably explain that somewhere so that when it does, hopefully it will get on a ballot. Somebody can pull that off a web page and go, oh, we already know that information. We don't have to wait and worry whether or not the city can produce it. So definitely keep us informed of those things as you are going through. There's no silly questions about anything, because if you all are asking it and you all are pretty familiar with our programs and the way the city functions on some of these things, then we definitely need to produce it so it's a flyer for later, or I would anticipate we would be having forums later and those kinds of things. So there's also an option of getting engaged with the media, which we can talk about that when we're at certain points. If we want to do something like that, certainly the staff can help facilitate that.
Okay, so before we adjourn, any other comments, questions, concerns?
I am so excited. I hope you guys are excited. Like seeing this, I'm like, this is so cool that I get to weigh in on this, especially since I've been transient for so long. So I get to share my opinions.
Miriam has a question.
Question and comment. For the panel discussion regarding diversity and inclusion, could we also add to that equity? I think that's also really important to include.
Yes.
And my question is, who are the panelists?
We don't have them set yet. We have reached out to a couple of people who actually applied for the committee and let them know we might want them in that capacity, but we would love to have comments or suggestions.
Yeah, I'd even be open to it right now. Who do you want to hear from? Because actually we were just sort of talking about what the next, it's becoming clear the more work we do, the next steps involved, and what the next meeting might look like. And we were actually thinking about that as a possible the March meeting. So getting some feedback from you all now, but we can, who are some of the...
We talked about MV Advancements being one of the part of a panel about physical barriers to participation. And we talked about the school district has some specialists in that. We actually didn't tell you this yet, Michael, but we had thought maybe you would be a good panelist for that as well, based on your work at the school district.
Would you like to weigh in on that? Or
Let me think about it.
Okay. I mean, I definitely want I definitely want to hear from someone that you maybe would recommend, or that Unitas board would recommend.
Okay.
Any other suggestions about that?
Sarah.
Well, it sounded like we were wrapping things up, and I wanted to just ask, generally speaking, is there anything you'd like us to focus on between now and the next meeting, so we can come in kind of ready to start work and be thinking about those things?
You'll get an email a week before the next meeting with
Yeah, and that'll be kind of the standard, so we'll kind of get into a flow, but that'll be the scheduled medium of communication.
So the tours, and then reading the MAC 2032, and then probably reviewing stuff they sent out for this week. Because it's a lot, right? I've read through it and it's still kind of like, oh yeah, like I can't retain it all.
I read the report that you guys emailed us and kind of looked that over, and one of the things I didn't see, maybe I missed it, you had mentioned about some other facilities, but was there ever a process of like bringing in another group that has been through this process and learn from them and say, hey, we built this Croc Center and this is what worked for us, this is what did not work for us, as just some, valuable information that might be helpful in moving through this process. I don't know if that was done, or if you're thinking about doing that, or
We have
or even actually maybe them to meet with us.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Marty. We have talked to some jurisdictions, not as much YMCA's, although we have talked to Sherwood, who owns the facility and then contracts with the YMCA to program it and then run it. We as staff have had phone calls with Redmond and some of the other places Eugene, who has either put something forward to the voters and failed miserably or passed things to learn their lessons learned. Might be tricky to get them here for you, but we could, we've been keeping notes of our phone calls with them, so we could do that, and maybe that's something that if you all know of those cities or jurisdictions or districts that have had successes or failures, we can also interview them and at least provide you the notes from that if they're not able to come speak with us. It's a great idea. So a panel of people who have gone through similar exercises and either been successful or not. Mm-hmm.
Jenny.
I'll have to work on that maneuver. I was just thinking that maybe dovetails back a little bit to what Sarah was asking about. What do we want to, just email those thoughts, those ideas. Hey, I'd like to hear from this person, or I'd like to hear from this group, or I'd like to hear from somebody that, has this or that experience. I think we are here to serve you so that you can make the right decisions. So if you have ideas about what will help you make those right decisions, then definitely send something our way.
The list that you mentioned about that you guys have already started with other facilities, where are you going to email that out, or
We can. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can actually put that on the webpage as well, so everybody can look at it and see it. The public can see it.
Suggested facilities.
We have not visited them each ourselves. So some of the places are word of mouth. Some of them are. We heard sometimes people will come into the counter and just say, hey, you should have a facility like this, and we'll add it to the list. So we're not necessarily recommending these as good examples, but we'll just keep it as a rolling list. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll just kind of go ahead and wrap it up, but I just wanted to say again, thank you for being here and, being committed to this. And I know most, if not all of us, this has been a long day. It's asking a lot. We get that. We just really appreciate your time, and we'll do the best we can to make this, efficient, productive. Hopefully, have some fun along the way. But thank you for being here, and we look forward to working with you all.
Go Mancat!